Welcome to Content Disrupted, bold takes on brand marketing. I'm your host, Casey Noble, and together we'll explore what it takes to excel in brand marketing at one of the most exciting and disruptive times in industry history.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Content Disrupted, Bold Takes on Brand Marketing. Our guest today is Amanda Todorovich, Executive Director of Digital Marketing at Cleveland Clinic, where she's been responsible for growing one of the top 40 most visited websites at clevelandclinic.org. Amanda is a brilliant and bold digital marketing thought leader. She's been inducted into the Healthcare Internet Hall of Fame, named a CMI Content Marketer of the Year, and is really a true master of all things content marketing. So super excited to have you on the show. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Awesome. So just to get us started, I think throughout your career, you've really been an advocate for content marketing. Even from the early days, I would say, of content marketing, like you've been in the game for a while and really seen it as a critical component, I think, as many of us in content marketing do, in the way that our brands are showing up and demonstrating that they're really like there for their customers. So given even over the last year or 2 years, how complex digital marketing has become, both from a technological standpoint and in terms of its even role in the customer journey, we've seen that concept of being there for the customer maybe not change really in core principle and sentiment, but definitely evolve a lot from a practical standpoint in terms of how we evolve this practice of content marketing. So I want to talk to you about that today. Before we start unpacking, I'm wondering if you can give our listeners just a little bit of background into your own career trajectory. How did you get into content marketing and wind up where you are today at Cleveland Clinic?
Sure. So I actually began my career on the traditional public relations and media relations front. So I was constantly gathering stories inside the organizations that I was working with, but then sort of begging, if you will, reporters to tell the story for us. And so the evolution into content marketing was really natural because it just kind of shifted to actually telling the story on our own platforms. I sort of fell into content marketing a bit by happy accident. My career took a little bit of a turn back in 2008, 2009. I had a brief stint in financial services that did not end very well because that was like the most brutal time in recent history in finance.
I remember.
But I ultimately landed in a role co-founding a startup company called MedCity News in 2009. And I co-founded the business with a former journalist, and he and I sort of had to figure out a business model on how we're going to make money. And this is at a time when blogs were emerging, social media was just coming on the scene for a lot of brands. And we were able to sort of help a lot of healthcare organizations get up and running and get started. We built up a network of writers, and really, we were doing content marketing before content marketing was called that. It was our custom content business, which is what most publishers were doing at the time. And so it's sort of evolved from there. I met Joe Pulizzi before Content Marketing Institute because we were all sort of on the forefront of this type of work. And so then ultimately, over time, the work that I was doing with healthcare systems all over the world ultimately led to a call from Cleveland Clinic to help with the blog. They had already launched, but were looking to sort of take it to the next level. So in 2013, when I joined the Cleveland Clinic, I had a team of 3 people. I was hired to be a digital engagement manager, really lead blogs and social media and a little bit of email. Fast forward to now, I lead a team of more than 100 people responsible for everything digital, including our entire website, all of our social media channels, videos, podcasts, analytics, the development, kind of everything all in one big house. And so it's been an incredible journey, and certainly one that I'm very proud of. But the work and the dependency on content marketing for the Cleveland Clinic has been truly, I think, a privilege. We've been able to really demonstrate true value in content marketing in our organization because there's such a tremendous amount of pressure to be trusted and credible in our space.
Yeah, especially healthcare, right? As you were just
Yes.
saying, so a lot to unpack, a lot of great experience. I mean, you've been so successful from the ground up. You have a lot of experience to share. Specifically talking about Cleveland Clinic, you just mentioned you yourself have evolved from a director of more like content marketing to heading up digital, right? I think that speaks to the importance of content as sort of a core component of all of this. And we can talk a little bit about how that's changed what you focus on and are doing internally as well. But I would love to hear just about, you mentioned the blog, the Health Essentials blog. clevelandclinic.org. Can you talk to us a little bit about like where that was when it started and its role in content marketing? Because I think content marketing has exploded in recent years. It originally has always been associated with sort of like top of funnel, maybe very like search oriented content. Maybe that was the case at Cleveland Clinic as well. But where did you start, and how has like the mission and the role of content marketing evolved within the Cleveland Clinic marketing ecosystem since?
Yeah. So the blog, when I walked in the door, was a very interesting situation. The little team that was working on it, who had all kind of been yanked out of other jobs to sort of start this project, were running around with a spreadsheet that was a giant list of topics and posts that internal stakeholders wanted on the blog. And so what you had was this hodgepodge of topics that was very treatment, surgical, high ROI, procedure driven content. And there was no real consistency to the approach. It was kind of whatever the clinicians agreed to when they would review the content. And so when I got there, I started talking about, well, what's the data tell us? What's actually getting traffic? What are people actually engaging with? Because the blog had been up for almost a year at that point. And the reality was some things were working and some things were very much not working. And so we sort of scrapped everything that wasn't working. We threw that lovely spreadsheet out the window and said, okay, this really needs to be about what our audience wants from us. And the truth is, when you're a hospital, nobody wants to follow you on social media. Nobody wants to engage with you. They really don't engage with you unless there's something very wrong. So how do you become relevant in their everyday life? How do you show them that you're a trusted, credible source of information, that you are there to take care of them and their families? And content has allowed us to really do that. The blog has evolved a lot to really be that everyday lifestyle content, truly help you live with a condition, know when to seek treatment. But it's not everything, right? We still need content in many other places. And I think what has been really prominent in our journey and why our team has grown and why we've seen so much traffic growth and success is really marrying different aspects of our content together to serve that complete patient journey. So everything from our health library now, which is the encyclopedia of health information, when someone's searching a symptom and like, oh, is this what's wrong with me? What do I do? How do I get care for this? Should I get care for this? Those types of things are not blog posts. That is in-depth, very long form content that's comprehensive and got a lot of sources behind it and doesn't talk about Cleveland Clinic, is very much about what is that thing? What is that treatment? What is that procedure? What is that condition? What is that symptom, drug, whatever? And so marrying the health library with health essentials has led to dramatic growth, incredible brand awareness and trust, and has evolved our entire strategy to be able to serve a little bit more of the funnel with content, but also really think through where and how we use that content. It's not just about SEO, although over time, organic search has become the dominant source of traffic for us, absolutely. It's still very much about how do we meet people where they're looking for these answers, and how do we make sure we're there at every turn with the right answer, with a credible answer. Especially in recent years, there's been a flood of misinformation, disinformation, tons of just crazy people who have no business talking about healthcare. So it's become even more important for us to be a stronger, bolder voice and to approach everything that we do from this like consistent strategy of let's make sure we're providing those answers, every answer that everybody in the world is really looking for. And it's unique to us. That's not true for every health system, right? We're a global health brand, which is rare. And so it's a little different than having a very targeted customer where you're looking at specific demographics. But it is definitely something that has led to a much stronger brand presence and has certainly helped us reach some pretty big aggressive goals pretty cost effectively.
So from a tactical standpoint, where are you getting those inputs on the questions that people want answered? Did this start out as sort of like your best guess and then evolve, or are you relying really heavily on search as a proxy for that type of data? Or are you talking to folks internally? Where do you gather that info?
Kind of all of the above. In today's environment, it's a lot of search data for sure. And so what our monthly search volumes around questions and topics, what are we seeing people use our site search for? What are we seeing on social media? And what are those topics that are bubbling up in the news? I mean, it's a little bit of everything. We huddle every day and we talk about what we need to do today. We're not the type of organization that's going to have a year-long editorial calendar. We want to be as hyper relevant as we can be. So we bring every piece of information and data we have to the table. It's not so much about like it has to hit a specific threshold before we're going to do it or anything like that. It's very much like, okay, if they're looking for this, we should have it. And if there is something that we want to get ahead of that we know they're going to be looking for, then let's get ahead of that. So we plan out a little bit seasonally because we know healthcare needs evolve a lot as the seasons change. And when we hit quote unquote flu season and things like that, we definitely editorially map that stuff out. But we also leave plenty of room for flexibility to be relevant to what's going on today. And I think the best example I can give you of that is what we did through COVID, and certainly just reacting every single day to what was going on and how the story was changing. Our team was ready for that because we are built for that. We work that way anyway. So we really do take everything we have available to the different members of our team and bring it forward. So social's monitoring social, the SEO team is monitoring search. We have the newsroom and the comm team monitoring news, and all of that stuff just comes together into what we ultimately end up publishing each day.
So you have all of those arms of the content marketing, let's say, organization together in that room for ideation, and you guys are huddling daily. That's awesome. I'm sure it helps to have you, the content marketing head, at the helm of all that now, especially in the digital role.
I mean, it definitely does. But we have grown so much that we have amazing leadership in every aspect of the team. And I'm not in all those huddles every day. I huddle with my direct reports each morning. We have like a tiered system. So they start with their individual teams and then things will bubble up to me as needed. My role today is much more about removing barriers and blockers and making sure they have what they need. Lots of conversation around technology decision-making and budgeting, as have access to new tools and new things emerging all the time. And how does that make sense? So my role used to be a lot more hands-on in the day-to-day of like, what are we writing about today? I honestly couldn't tell you what we're pushing today. They are just a well-oiled machine at this point, and it is tremendous. We do very much move like a publisher. We monetize our website as well. So there's advertising things going on. There's just organic work all the time. And so all of those different arms of the team have amazing leadership and are certainly doing tremendous work every day. Very blessed to have the great team that I do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so we're able to, I'm assuming, build out that successful team because you were able to monetize the website, one. So I'm assuming that money, that revenue goes back into marketing
Right back in
part, which is really smart. You can expand the team, which you need to do to become a media publisher, let's say. I want to talk a little bit more in a second about operational structure and technology, but one big challenge, especially in healthcare, I think, is you mentioned misinformation, but just generally there's massive oversaturation, a lot of noise in the content landscape, digital landscape overall. So what advice do you have? What are your sort of biggest tips for identifying the content that you need to write about, but making sure that content stands out from a thought leadership or unique voice standpoint? Like, how are you making sure that every single piece has the value that it needs to provide to resonate with an audience and continue building that audience, and then that it's just visible amidst all the noise in the first place? What are your biggest tips?
Biggest tips are certainly thinking about what your voice is. How do you want to talk about your topics in the market? Because at the end of the day, search is about having the best content on the internet. So what does that mean? And in everybody's individual industries and spaces, that's going to mean something different. But for us, it's really been about how do we become more approachable and empathetic in our content? How do we make sure we're writing in a way that people can actually understand, that they can read this and walk away and feel like they got the value that we want them to get? And that means writing at a 6th to 8th grade reading level at the most. That means writing in a human way, bringing emotion into the content. Vast majority of health systems don't do this. They're very academic because our physicians are very academic. Most of them are researchers as well as clinicians. And so then you're like balancing this point of view. And we've been very consistent around this messaging internally and really talking about why that strategy is so important. It's what makes us different than our competitors. It's what makes our content more desirable to users. So even if maybe one of our competitors ranks a spot or two above us, they might click through to ours because they know that it's going to actually be something they understand. So we've been really consistent about that. We've also really tried to pair our editorial team and our SEO experts together on everything we do. So there's constant input from both sides of that equation in all of the content to make sure we're maximizing the return on everything that we publish, but then also ensuring that the conversations we're having with our medical experts, whether it's through interviews for Health Essentials or it's a medical review of a health library article, that those clinicians understand that brand voice and tone that we're going for as well. And we're not asking them to rewrite, we're asking them for a medical review. And so that has taken a long time. We've had to build up that trust and credibility internally just as much as we have with the audience as well. Because as you can imagine, sometimes the doctors are like, wait, this sounds so basic and so simple, but that means we're doing it right. That's the point. So you have to have a strategy. You have to communicate the strategy. You have to document the strategy. You have to constantly reinforce the strategy and stick to it. And I think that's the hardest part. You can have a strategy all day long, but if you're not actually adhering to it and you're constantly making exceptions because someone's screaming and complaining and wanting something, then you're really not doing content marketing. And I think that's something that we've done a really good job of, probably better than most. And I honestly think that our strategy today is pretty much the same as it's been for a very long time. We've just added pieces to it and kind of infiltrated that strategy into more platforms and more channels and more mediums than when we were in our early days.
How do you think about that, about expanding across platforms and mediums? Because we've seen this massive explosion of channels. There's this pressure to be everywhere. Again, because there's so much noise, you're trying to figure out where your customers are. That's shifting a lot. And people are jumping from platform to platform. So how do you maximize the content effectiveness and explode the amplification of every piece that you're creating? What's the order of operations there?
We're blessed with a large staff. So we're able to do more than most, I think. In the earlier days when we weren't as big, it's a lot of really understanding what is the investment required to be authentic on that platform, to sustain the volume and consistency of content you need on the platform. Is your audience really there? Or is this just somebody internally demanding that the brand be everywhere? And if you can't serve the audience meaningfully, it is not worth it just to have your name there. And I think that too many people, like you said, try to do everything, and their audience probably isn't everywhere, particularly in B2B spaces. I always am so dumbfounded by certain things I see on channels. Why are you doing this on Instagram? It's got to feel like it belongs there. Because the more you try to force your way onto these channels, people see right through that. I think everyone spends so much time on certain platforms that it stands out when it's oh, that's very corporate. That feels like a sales pitch. That's not what these channels are for. Unless you're doing an ad. And advertising is not the same thing as organic content marketing on social media. And I think that sometimes those lines get really blurred. I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure from above to have every channel and check every box. And it's our job as content marketers, as the content experts, to go back and show the data, explain who's actually there and what's really happening, because they don't know. We are on Instagram at Cleveland Clinic as a brand. We don't need to have 55 different accounts, right? So it's also managing the strategy again and having rules, having a process, we vet any kind of request for a new channel as a cross-functional. We have a committee established that's meeting regularly and reviewing these requests. Anything that my team actually manages the content around, as we've added new things over time, it's always been a question of, can we do this right? Can we do this well? And if not, then we don't. And things have evolved over time. There's things that have gone away. There's things that we've added. You got to react to what's now. Where are your customers at today? And that may very well change as channels come and go, or as the demographics of users evolve. And it used to be TikTok was only for teenagers. Now everybody's on TikTok. So we're on TikTok, right? You have to really just, I think, go with the flow a bit and be prepared to make adjustments. And if you add something, maybe something else should go away.
So you mentioned measurement is a big part of that. I would love to hear a little bit about when you're exploring a new channel or you've just launched it, do you have sort of a set of criteria or anything that you're looking at specifically as sort of part of this evaluation phase? Should we continue to invest here? And also, how do you navigate on the flip side, trying new things? So you guys have expanded, not just written content, you're doing podcast content, you're doing video content. When you were making those sort of choices about trade-offs and where you put your effort, how are you justifying those investments and making those decisions in terms of cost benefit?
We talk about data every day. It's not like we just get to a point where we're like, oh, maybe we should measure this or analyze this. We talk about data all the time. And that's not just about where we are right now or what our content that we're publishing is doing. It's always about what's going on around us. Because again, like I said before, it's always about trying to be hyper relevant and meet people where they are. So we talk about where are they today? What is going on? I'll give you a really great example of a conversation we're having right now, Reddit. Because Google suddenly made Reddit this huge part of their search results. We have never really had a Reddit strategy, but suddenly Reddit has more exposure in places where we already are, and perhaps we should think about this a little bit differently. So what are we doing? Well, as a team, in every huddle, every day, it's like, okay, do we think this is going to stay? What are the Google indicators? How much space is this taking up in the search results page? Are they getting click-throughs? We don't know, right? We don't have access to that kind of intel, but if Google's going to keep doing it or they're adding and expanding that space, then it must be doing something. And so maybe we should look at that. And when I say maybe we should look at that, means the team that would manage that within my group is going to go do a bit of a deep dive and understand. And when we look at that, we look at a few things. Competitors are not just other health systems for us, it's other health publishers, right? So it is the WebMDs of the world. And so are they there? What are they doing? Are there gaps we could fill with content? Do we have content we already produce that could be adjusted for this platform? Or would this have to be something net new? What's the format that we would need it in? What's the resources required to really sustain and support a workflow? Do we have that? And as we've added things over time, that means, again, people get plucked and pulled around and do different things as the environment is telling us we need to do. So it's not one number. It's not there's like a certain threshold. It's just, does this feel right? Is this the time? Do we have the resources? Does it make sense? And what's the why? Why are we even talking about this? Where is it coming from? And that usually answers the question.
I would imagine so, yeah. And so from a technology standpoint and sort of like a what's changing standpoint, obviously we can't ignore artificial intelligence, generative AI. You're in healthcare, which is a space where trust, accuracy are extremely important. I'm curious about your personal thoughts around the role of AI. I know you've been, on panels, things like that, talking about it before, and sort of how you're approaching that as a head of digital marketing leader as a helpful tool. How are you ensuring you're potentially implementing that technology responsibly, if at all? Just generally, what's your thought on the role of generative AI specifically in content creation for your industry right now?
Yeah. So we've been on this journey for quite a while. Pretty early, we started just jumping in to like understand. And our approach is really, I think, just and curious. We definitely want to learn and evolve and lean into technology where it's beneficial and helpful. And that's not every aspect of the work that we do. And I don't ever see a day where AI is writing our health library articles for us. When you're trying to have the best content on the internet, and it needs to be empathetic and human and approachable, and it needs to be fact-checked and medically reviewed, that's not really something AI is good at. AI is very iterative, right? It's going to take existing assets and do something else with them. So that's how we think about it. How can this help us with iteration? How can this help us with analysis or summarizing or reporting or things that are not required to be the best content on the internet? Things that are more fill in the blank and step and repeat types of pieces, which may not even fall into my team's external marketing piece, but might be something along the lines of internal communications, for example, or things that we're doing for donor communications, where it's a lot of proposal creation, stuff like that. So in my role, I've been tasked with sort of doing a roadmap for the marketing communications division. We've partnered with the Marketing AI Institute, but our approach is kind of pilot and scale where it makes sense. So we did not just jump on a whole bunch of tools because they're cool. When I present about this, I have a slide with squirrels everywhere. Like, that's not it. It's not just go try all this stuff, especially in healthcare where we're definitely have regulations and privacy concerns and things you have to do. But where can we actually look at this and say, this can make our lives easier. This can make things better for us. This could let us actually take on a new channel because it frees up capacity in a way that maybe we couldn't have otherwise. So our approach has been a handful of small pilots that we've sort of invested in particular use cases. I actually do have an AI ops manager on my team now. She's helping facilitate all of that work because the most important thing to me about the pilots was measurement. What was the process like before? Is this tool actually helpful or not? Because I will tell you that some of them are not. They add steps to your work that make it actually harder, or you spend more time editing the deliverable from AI than you would have just doing it yourself. And so we wanted to benchmark everything. We want to make sure, because there's also this false reality that there's all these free and cheap and easy tools that you could just go do. And that's definitely not true in a regulated industry. And that's definitely not true if you have cybersecurity in your organization. And when you're looking at like an enterprise license or things like that, they're expensive investments. And so for us, it's been about let's look and see and try and test and then make recommendations back to leadership on where we think this is worth scaling. And there's different aspects of marketing communications where this, I think, is going to have greater impact quicker. Over time, I think it will impact everything to some degree. And we found a lot of success in using AI to help us be more creative. I'll give you a really good example from our editorial team. We write a lot about different body systems, different functions, different types of procedures. And sometimes we're always trying to look for a new analogy or a new way to like describe something that will make it understandable. And AI tools have helped with that a lot. When you ask it for a recommendation on a type of analogy, it's not like we've used a ton of them as they have actually come through the AI tool, but it's definitely inspired a lot of different creativity and thinking. And so there's ways that it's helpful. There's ways that it's not. I think there's a lot of emerging tools every day that people jump all over. And then it's sort of like being focused and being thoughtful and careful. I think it can have a really big impact on smaller teams as well, where they may not have as much ability in all of these different areas that we do. So it's also been a little bit tricky. I will also say there's definitely employee bias when you ask for people to test these tools. They're very passionate about their work. And they're definitely always going to be better at particular aspects of the work than AI ever will be. But the conversation we have is a little bit about what's good enough versus perfection and where is it needed and where is it most valued. So there's a lot to think about. And this isn't going away. And this is going to impact everything that we do. I think anybody who's in any kind of digital or technical role thrives on change, or you wouldn't be doing this as your career. And so personally, I always love exploring new technologies and new tools because I kind of am obsessed with efficiencies and maximizing the return on the investment of content and the different things that we do. And so this has been exciting to me, but it's also, I know, very scary for our employees and challenging to navigate how to change with the technology and maintain quality, maintain accuracy, maintain all the things we need to do. So I think we're at the very beginning stages of a long journey, and this conversation will definitely continue always, I think, from now into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that you're testing sounds really smart. And what we've done as well, also kind of lean into with our implementing actually GenAI into our own technology products and software is there's no one model that's necessarily the best for everything that you need it for. There might even be one that's better at summarization than one that's better for like support with ideation or something like that. So it's about sort of this mixed model, testing different types of enterprise licenses. It sounds like you haven't gone the route of like building your own LLM internally and doing that full proprietary like overload.
That's been a discussion. I mean, it's definitely like the dream, right? But it's expensive. It's hard. It's complicated in an enterprise of our size. I partner very closely with our chief digital officer and our ITD team and our cybersecurity team. We have an internal AI task force that's sort of governing everything. But the vast majority of work that council is working through is clinical. Because as you can imagine, those types of implications are far greater and much riskier for the organization. And then within that, we also have our own marketing AI council that we've established to help us build guardrails around what we are going to do and to also communicate constantly about the pilot progress and the different things we're doing, have intake for new ideas and use cases that we want to explore. So and to educate. Education is key. And so what resources are available? What have any of us gone to or heard or want to share back? And so it's a constant conversation and certainly something that I think we're taking very seriously and want to make sure we're being responsible about it. And it's, as an enterprise, very important to us too. I mean, the healthcare industry is under tons of financial pressure, so any efficiency gains are critical. And so also understanding marketing's role in that and where we can play a partnership role in any of these explorations as well that the enterprise has taken on. For example, with ChatGPT, we have a larger relationship with Microsoft. And so things with co-pilot as well, like where and how we fit into the larger scale, but then also doing things that are very just marketing specific.
I love that. Can you share some more? You just mentioned a few things, but specific ways that you're approaching the training and education portion of that, because we've done our own survey research. I mean, there are still a decent number of organizations. Surprisingly, it's actually more smaller organizations that we found from our surveys who have sort of like still Gen AI bans in place. Larger organizations are much more willing to kind of experiment and pilot in this way. And most are using enterprise subscription-based tools versus self-building. But there are very few organizations where the marketing leadership feels like there is a structured sort of training and best practices implementation program in place, if you will. It can still be a little bit like uncomfortably Wild West inside, with maybe different divisions or pockets conducting their own different little experiments. And then you mentioned at the individual level, especially with a creative prompting exercise like analogy generation, potentially, how are you establishing like the guardrails for that? And can someone go into a portal within Cleveland Clinic marketing and say like, here's some best practices for prompting this AI tool that you have access to now to do XYZ? Like, can you talk a little bit about the mechanisms you have in place there?
Yep. So before we started any of this piloting and all of that work, we started by having a workshop for our entire marketing and communications division, which is 300 people. The basics of AI. I mentioned earlier the Marketing AI Institute, and Paul Reitzar, his team facilitated that for us. So everybody got baseline knowledge and understanding of some of the terms and some of the things. And during those conversations, it was also like, you can't just go do whatever you want. Do not go do whatever you think you want to do. And so it was a little bit of education of risk. And then as well, like I said, kind of the basics of what is AI? What are these things? What's an LLM? What does this mean? And so we did that for everybody. And then we kind of took it from there into more leadership oriented conversations to determine what we wanted to pilot and what we wanted to do and invest in as a marketing division. But foundationally wanted everybody to start from the same place. And then the Marketing AI Council that I mentioned has representation from every single department within marketing and communications. And that group meets monthly. And then we also have a Teams channel where we're sharing updates and documents and report outs and all kinds of stuff all the time, or just, hey, check out this article. It's pretty cool. It's formal and informal. And then there's also tons of free resources and webinars and things like that. So there's always opportunity for us to share those things. And so people will take advantage of that. And then they meet virtually like this once a month. There's different teams reporting out on pilot projects. There's updates on the status of different reviews, like cyber review on different things we're trying to do, et cetera. And then there's just discussion and questions. And it's always really engaging and super exciting to just sort of check in and hear. And many people have brought forward, I mean, we have hundreds of use cases captured that people would like us to look at. And so it's been something that we've worked more towards formalization. We actually just finished drafting kind of our terms of use for marketing AI. And so it's a collaborative effort with a lot of different folks from across the division to have input into that so that we, again, represent everyone's interest and not just like my team for the website. It's really about kind of everything and thinking through what steps we want there to be and how we want to approach it. And there's intellectual property value and things that people don't always think about when it comes to content that's publicly available. And so that's part of the conversation as well. Our health library, for example, lots of people want access to that to use it for different projects inside marketing and outside. And so there's protections in place in our policies. And it's easy to point now to say, sorry, no, this is how you do. These are the steps you have to go through before we're going to engage with you. And that includes some legal partnership as well, and making sure that we're following and in step with whatever the enterprise guidelines are as well. So we don't want to duplicate any of that. We don't need to. So ours are very specific to marketing use case.
Brilliant. I think people are going to be freaking out about how zipped up this sounds, and also just great ideas for how to get your hands around this within an organization when that's so critical. You mentioned something really important about protecting your own information that I think gets overlooked a lot in this conversation. And also, we've seen a lot of education needed around just the fact that if you're creating content from scratch with AI, it's not copyrightable. You don't own it. If that's important for your organization, and that it is for like 99.9% of brands, like that's an issue and something you need to be aware of. So we never recommend going that route either.
No, monetizing, having advertisers, it also creates additional liability and additional things that we owe to them.
You have to be able to explain exactly how
Yeah.
you're using it and why. What is your take on disclosure too? Just personally, or even if you guys have talked about this within Cleveland Clinic, like the future of what it looks like in terms of saying this was generated with the support of generative AI. What do you think that should look like?
I think disclosure is critical. Transparency is so important, especially I think in healthcare. Just the sources and the credibility of the content matter so much that I think it's really imperative that you're sharing if AI is a part of your process. I don't think it matters too much. Like if we're using it to inspire an idea, I'm not going to say the article is in partnership with AI if really all we asked it was like, what do you think about this headline? But I do think if you're using it to generate the content in any way, that absolutely should be shared with the user.
Any final thoughts for folks right now who are navigating this area of marketing in particular in terms of wrangling your team, keeping them focused on the bigger picture purpose while all of this conversation around technology and AI is happening at the same time?
I think it all comes down to vision and philosophy. And I don't think it's any different than any other technology that we have had to navigate over the years, right? The way we work today versus 10 years ago, 15 years ago is drastically different. And I think that this is the same type of thing. As leaders, we absolutely have to make sure that we are communicating about these things in a way that inspires and gets enthusiasm and makes people want to embrace the evolution of the technology and the tools available to us as content marketers. And sometimes that's extremely difficult. As employees who are faced with utilizing these new tools and technologies, again, need to be open-minded, need to see and understand where they can help you and not come at it from a place of they're going to replace me, because they're not. You can't create content without people because somebody has to actually use the AI tools to do it. And so there is just, I think, a lot of fear that should just be minimized, because the truth is it's exciting, it's fun, it's experimentation, it's new. I have always been of the mindset of constant experimentation, iteration, and evolution. We cannot sit still in digital ever. So run with it, try it, see what you can do with it. I mean, it's only going to make things better if you're looking at it with that lens. If you're coming at it from a negative space, then the results are going to be negative. And I do think that you have to be smart and careful with your investments, like we talked about earlier. But at the same time, don't run away from it. I just think that it can be of benefit to a lot of different parts of the operation. And it's not just about generating content for you. All those steps of the process can be evaluated for AI use.
Amazing. And I love to hear your enthusiasm. I remember hearing you talking about like content marketing, and it shouldn't be a chore. It should be like getting to eat ice cream at the end of the day. Your team should be excited. And you fast forward and the same sort of enthusiasm around AI. So I would love if I could keep you on for a second for some speed round questions where people can get some insight into that positive visionary psyche for a second.
Absolutely. I mean, we think about it like a game. It's how do we beat yesterday? We want to, like, the high score, right? Like, who wants to be on the leaderboard? How do we just do better? How can we get more people to see the stuff we're writing? How can we get more engagement? And every day is a game. Every day is fun. Every day is how do we challenge each other and do better together? I can't even tell you, like, I love what we do because I can tell you how many people we help today. That's amazing. And that's what people need to be reminded of. And that's what my job is, to make sure my team knows that every day.
Love it. On the flip side of that, what keeps you up at night as a marketer?
I think the state of healthcare. I'm so passionate about this industry, but honestly, it's a struggle. There's a lot going on that makes things really difficult. And most of us are facing budget cuts and challenging decisions as we move forward. Having revenue coming in through the efforts that we do makes it a little bit different too. There's always pressure around that, and just continuing to generate the revenue we need to hit numbers. When we first started doing all of this, it was kind of gravy. If any of you have ever seen me present with that slide of the mashed potatoes, it ain't like that no more. very much built into our budget. And so as these things evolve, as traffic changes, as the landscape changes with search, just really trying to stay on top of that and ensure that we can achieve the goals in front of us.
And what keeps you going?
My people, the team, they're amazing. And I am just so inspired by the growth, by so many of the leaders on my team who've been on this journey with me for so many years now. It's just awesome. And like I said earlier, I mean, the fact that what we do helps so many people make decisions to take care of themselves and their families is the most rewarding aspect of what we do. And I truly have so much passion around healthcare and health content for that reason. And so it's been an amazing ride, and I'm super pumped about where we are and where we're headed.
And what marketing term do you love today?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I think it's just always about innovation. And I know that word is overused, but whatever is put in front of you, whether it's AI or a new social channel, it's just, how do you embrace that? That innovation, I think, is just a word I love.
And is there a marketing term that you hate or you wish you could just throw off a cliff? Like, we're never using this one again.
Let me think about that. Probably something about conversions, honestly, because in my particular space, that's really hard. We can't make people sick. We can't make you need a procedure, which just isn't. And there's so much more to what we do than that. And I think just talking about conversion at the bottom of the funnel all the time is like, okay, but you have to get them in the funnel. They have to want to engage with you and your brand. And I just think sometimes as decisions are made, especially in times right now where it's very much about the bottom line, things get lost. And so I would just say that conversion.
You were talking about that a little bit before in terms of the budget pressure that so many people are feeling. And I know you said healthcare in particular. Is that one of your biggest tips? Any couple of others for navigating that, especially if you have maybe even a smaller marketing team? You're measuring everything. You're assertive about saying like, hey, this is the function of our content marketing, and showing with an array of metrics how you're having an impact, not just tying everything to sales or conversions or appointment bookings. Any other things that have worked for you that you would advise people to embrace as they're navigating justification of everything?
Communicate about what's working and what's not, even when you're not asked. Do it consistently. I have a weekly email that goes out to a lot of people that is very much about highlights of the week. And here's the numbers, and here's something that is good, or here's something you need to know, or here's something that's bad that didn't work. An experiment that failed is just as important to communicate as one that succeeded. And we've been doing that a really long time. And it's also about recognizing the work and sharing, and also like acknowledging partnerships and people who've helped you along the way to just maintain the awareness of the work that you do, the support for the work that you do, and the gratitude that exists for the support. And I think we've just done that so much for so long that when the time came for an ask of expansion of resources or to grow the staff, our CEO knew our team had a track record of success. And that happens because of that, not because he asked me for an annual metrics report, right? That would mean nothing to him. But knowing and seeing the work, understanding the impact that we've had on the brand, when you Google search something, seeing us show up speaks volumes more than anything I could say. So it's also about delivering. And when you do that and it's noticed and noticeable, then I think the investment and the support for the work is just there. I've been incredibly blessed by the leadership we have here and the support that we've been given. And most of the things that have happened in the growth of the staff didn't happen because I asked for it. It was people asking me, what would it take? How could we just become the best website in health?
Amazing. And you built that trust, sharing the story every single day.
Sharing the story over and over again. Every week, what do we do?
Amazing. Amanda, it has been such a pleasure. I wish we could keep going all day, but we can't. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas, for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. And I hope we can have you back on the show at a later date.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Content Disrupted, brought to you by Skyward. Stay up to date on the latest ideas and insights in brand building and content marketing by visiting our website at skyward.com. Join us for our next episode, where we'll continue to challenge marketing norms and inspire you with fresh strategies for growing business through brand storytelling. See you there.